right, everyone. Welcome to the Stoa. Today we have Ludic Liberator with us today, Natalia Stroika. Natalia is a game maker of Ludic Liberations, a practice of collective play aimed at revealing and releasing internalized limitations. Its influences are transformational social therapy, emergent strategy, complex systems theory, pleasure activism, existential kink, all things that we've explored and loved here at the Stoa. So this feels like a session waiting to happen. And I'm quite excited for the session, quite excited to play with you all. And I'm basically just going to hand the keys to the Stoa over to Natalia, and she'll take us through the 90 minutes today and explain how we're going to play with each other. So welcome to the Stoa.
Thank you so much, Peter. I just want to start by saying thank you for inviting me. I'm really glad and grateful to be here. Thank you for Davud for inviting me as well, for connecting me to the Stoa. This community has been important to me over the last 2 years. I've attended quite a few sessions, especially last year, and got to learn a lot of things, meet people, and also connect with some heroes of mine. So it's really nice to be here and to be able to give back in the form of a practice that I've been developing that I think this community will really vibe with and help me push and develop even further. So I have a little presentation that I just want to start us off with, and then hopefully we'll do some hands-on pegging today. So I will share that screen. Okay. So pegging yourself with Ludic Liberation by me. Wait, that's not the 9th. I messed up the date, sorry. Okay, so I want to start off with my qualification, and I mean this in both kind of senses of the word. So like the thing that I think qualifies me the most to do this, to be an existential game maker and develop something called Ludic Liberation, and also a kind of qualification, like the fine print of how you should become in relationship to what I'm sharing, which is that in some traditional ways, I'm not qualified to do this at all. And this is based on a particular kind of cosmology and a belief about who we are in the world, that if you don't agree with, then you might be skeptical about the whole thing, which is fine. So my qualification to do this is based on an experience I had in 2018. I was doing a plant medicine ceremony, and I was communing with what I understood to be kind of a divine consciousness, a universal intelligence. And it was really sweet. I was asking questions and getting some really powerful images and responses. And one of the things I asked was, does everybody have a role to play in the world? Or does everybody have a job to do, kind of like something they're supposed to be? And I was wondering about that because I was really appreciating the role that the sort of ceremony holder was playing as part of the experience, kind of holding the space very appropriately and safely, and with a lot of like really being kind of like in their zone of genius. I was like, wow, this person is really doing what they're supposed to do. Does everybody have something like that they're supposed to do? And the answer that I got was really sweet, and I like to share it with people because I think it's liberating to all of us, which is that everybody has a lot of gifts that could develop. And it doesn't really matter if you develop and express those gifts, you're still loved. You're still part of the whole thing. But it really pleases the universe when you do express your gift and you kind of blossom. So it's kind of like a flower that gets to flower. You know, it's like everybody's just like psyched when the flower blossoms. If the flower never gets to blossom, it's okay, because it still had the potential for the flower. It still had its like all the seeds and the spirit, and it was part of life. But it really pleases the universe. So I was like, okay, that's nice. Kind of like take some pressure off. But like, all right, universe, but is there something like I'm supposed to do? Is there like a gift that I have that would be cool if it blossomed? And then it said, yes, you are a game maker. And to be honest, I was surprised to hear that answer. It's not something that I was like fishing for or had at the tip of my tongue. And I kind of was like, what? Like, because I didn't really even identify as a gamer. I didn't have like an aspiration to make games. So I was surprised to hear that, but I was also really intrigued. And I had this whole proper process of, you know, rejecting my call to action on the hero's journey, and trying to finish up some other sort of identity commitments. But I was continuously curious about that answer and that invitation to blossom in that way. And, you know, and as I thought about it more, I realized like, that there has been a lot of things that I've done that are kind of game maker-like. I've studied learning. I was really interested in kind of creating very participatory, transformative learning experiences that maybe invite people to be a little bit uncomfortable in what they're doing so that they could stretch themselves. I was always really interested in sort of, like self-help and different, and trying on different identities. So I realized that, you know, there was a coherence. There was like a coherence to this invitation for an identity. So after some time, I decided to create a space for myself to kind of practice whatever this was, to being a game maker. So like a studio for game making. So I created the Ludic Liberation Lab in early 2020 as a monthly space to sort of practice the possibilities of play, for liberation, for relational experimentation. It started out in person in Philadelphia, but then like everything switched to online, and people have played from all over the world. A misspelled play here too. So Ludic Liberation Lab is an experiment for making theory into practice through play. And it's called a lab because we conduct a relational experiment. So mostly it's been a monthly space for me to design something and try it on with other people. I've also invited other guest facilitators and game makers and learned through what they're doing, through being a participant as well, which is really important to me, to be a participant in playful spaces. What ludic liberation actually is, and also by working with people one-on-one in a kind of like game maker coach capacity, and continuing to be in dialogue with theories of play. So I'm really influenced by theories of non-dual tantra, by James Carr's finite and infinite games, which I know people are familiar with in this community, and other kind of ideas of playful relating, Leela as a kind of like universal play. So now I define ludic liberation as practice of personal and collective play aimed at revealing and releasing, and also like accepting and revising and stretching and enjoying our internalized limitations. So a practice of really liberating our limitations. And the word limitations in this sentence, I actually don't mean negatively. I know we kind of think of limitations as something negative, as a negative aspect of experience. We don't want to be limited. We want to be expansive. We want to grow. But I believe that limitations are just an inherent part of life, of existence. And in this cosmology of that we are actually all universal consciousness manifesting ourselves in these forms, that form and limitation is something we actually chose. It was a chosen aspect of incarnating, and we can enjoy those limitations and learn from playing with them. So that's how I see ludic liberation as a practice. And you could play it with other people in groups, like in the lab or in spaces like the STOA. And it has a nice effect of kind of seeing what other people do that are braver than you or less brave than you, and revealing kind of other people's limitations and seeing them reflected in yourself. Also, you could play it with one-on-one with like someone like a coach that can kind of witness your play and give you feedback. And you could also play it with yourself, because I think that we all have the tools to become aware of our limitations and our rules that we play by, and change them. And also we have the entire world to play with. So one way to play that I want to talk about today is what I affectionately call a PEG, or personal existential game. And because I'm a playful person, I obviously really enjoy plays on words and puns. So it really delights me that this acronym PEG, personal existential game, kind of has these connotations of three kinds of meanings of the word PEG. So there's a peg, which is, you know, some kind of like wooden wedge that you stick into a place, or I guess in the UK, a peg is a clothing pin, which I didn't know, but something that like holds something together. You know, it's kind of like a little wooden piece that you kind of like just stick in somewhere. Then there's the meaning of the word to peg, like I pegged you as a particular kind of person. I pegged you as a writer, which to me is interesting because it's like identifying or categorizing somebody in a particular way, which is, to me, is already like playful and indeterminate. It's not saying like, hey, I used, you know, all of this uncontrovertible evidence to decide that you are definitely a writer. It's like I used some intuitive clues to define you temporarily as this kind of person. And then there is the meaning of the word pegging, which I guess Dan Savage coined on his podcast, and I learned about from this episode of Broad City, which refers to a sexual act of a woman penetrating a man using a dildo. So that obviously refers to a kind of a play of a gender play, power reversal, consent, and vulnerability, that I also enjoy being part of this kind of personal existential game package of connotations. So what a personal existential game is a set of rules or intentional limits that you consent to play by not in order to win the game, but to learn about your own existing existential gameplay strategies and experiment with new ones. So it's a game you play in order to become more aware of the other games you already play, and it's like a transitional game into more liberated play. It's kind of to see if you enjoy this other way of relating to the world. And a great example of a personal existential game that I didn't invent, but I've been really inspired by, and I've played many, many times by myself, is the Rejection Therapy game. I don't know if folks are familiar with this here. It's created by Jia Zhang, who now has like a TED Talk about it, and I don't know, lots of little versions of the game. But basically the goal of the game is to get rejected by another person at least once every single day. And you could play it for a week, a month, 100 days. There are like card decks that you could buy that suggest ways that you could get rejected. So here's some examples. You could challenge a stranger to a rock, paper, scissors game. You could try to get your coffee for free. You could try to get a ride with someone. And rather than the goal being something you getting the thing that you asked for, the goal of the game is actually to get rejected and to kind of change your relationship to being rejected. So if you've ever played this, it really, getting rejected becomes this thrilling experience of like, it's like, yes, I got rejected. You actually start to not want the thing that you wanted in the first place. So it really shows how a game dynamic can can change your reactions to the things that you've been avoiding or fearing in the past. So it changes the game you were playing before, which was like avoiding rejection game. In the avoiding rejection game, your goal is not actually to get what you want, it's to avoid the opportunity to get rejected in the first place, which is very limiting and internally limiting. So playing this game can change your limitations in relation to your own kind of like space of possibility. So I think this is a really good and simple model of a personal existential game, and you play it with the rest of the world because other people are kind of like these bots in the game that provide you the opportunity to ask them for something that they might not want to give. And for that person, it also might be, you know, powerful to say no or to say yes. So you're kind of inviting other people to play as well. So the way I think that we all can design our own sort of rejection therapies about lots of different things that we want to change in our lives. So, or just stretch or just play with. So this is sort of a process for how to peg yourself. So you first want to start by identifying an existential game that you already play, but you don't really feel satisfied with. Because if you are satisfied with something, you might not want to change it. So a game that you feel stuck in or bored of, or kind of like, oh, this is just like a habit, or you're constrained. So you feel the limit of it, but not in that fun way, because limits can be fun. So perfect games for that are avoidance, like the rejection avoidance, or self-judging games. So games in which you don't do something, or if you do something, you like start to feel immediately bad afterwards. And then you want to analyze that game. And that's actually kind of a playful, fun experience too, because you realize it's like, oh, I'm so clever. I'm already playing this weird, kinky game. So I like to name the game. What is this game called? When do you play it? How do you play? What are the rules? And how do you win and lose this game? And what we might realize a lot of the time is that we're playing all these games in which it's much easier to lose than to win. There's like 100 possibilities for losing and only one very specific possibility for winning. And we almost never get that. So we're just kind of playing this like losing game. So then to start kind of creating a different game, you might want to play with expanding or diversifying the win condition. So I like to think of it as like if you have a target board and winning, you've decided like only perfectly hitting the center is winning. You want to like just totally like open that up and say like hitting anywhere on the board is totally winning, or hitting like even outside the board is great. So you want to kind of expand and diversify what winning means, or make it more varied. So we'll go through some examples. Another way to play with changing the win is to actually let someone else win, but take the credit for the win. So I was thinking about this, like a game we might play, like an avoidance game, is like, I might not want to say something in a public or like a mixed company setting because I don't want to feel stupid. I'm afraid that somebody will correct me and I will then feel dumb that I didn't know the thing that they said. So a way of kind of letting somebody else win by taking the credit is, oh, like in this dynamic of me saying something that was incorrect and someone else correcting it, someone got to win. And I provided the opportunity for that person to feel smart. And you could actually like congratulate that person, like, wow, thank you so much for teaching me about this. You're so knowledgeable. And you get to kind of like inflate, amplify their feeling or feeling smart in the process and participate in it. So rather than focus on like, oh, I feel so dumb, I feel so stupid, I didn't know, focusing on your own loss, you could enjoy the experience of amplifying someone else's win. Another way I like to play this is like, sometimes I avoid hosting people because I get stressed out about having like a messy house or an imperfect apartment. One way I like to, I change my own relationship to it is by saying like, you know what, if people come to my apartment and it's not perfect, they will then feel liberated to not feel so pressured to have perfect apartments. And they will host more, and then I will get to win by getting invited to their apartment. And it's a way to like let someone else win, but in the process, you actually liberate yourself as well in your relationship to something. Another thing to consider when pegging yourself is to remember that you kind of can't get liberated unless you are trapped first. So liberation is not the same as like the freedom that you start with. It's the escape from a trap, escape from limitation. Like pegging, the sexual act, probably wouldn't be as like taboo or kinky if everybody practiced it. Like the reason it's kind of interesting is because it's a reversal of traditional gender roles. So really kind of like enjoying being trapped in some way and analyzing the trap and remembering how you got yourself in there is kind of makes the whole experience more playful. It's kind of remembering that you may be already pegging yourself in a way that you didn't realize. So 2 little qualifications about this whole process is you might need someone to help you. I find that it's kind of hard sometimes to actually peg yourself by yourself, unless you have something like the Rejection Therapy game is really smart because you could use other people without them fully knowing. So it is helpful to have kind of a partner or a coach to help you play something like a peg. And I think it's totally cool to get a friend to do that with, that you don't necessarily need to hire somebody professional, but also I think it would be cool if we had lots of coaches who did different kinds of stuff, not just help you like improve, your productivity, but play in a diversifying manner with your life. And another thing that's important to remember is that you don't want to make this a forever game, like decide that this is how are you going to play or live your life for the rest of your life. Because as soon as you start making something kind of a compulsive, forever, infinite behavior, it stops sort of being a voluntary game. So putting some limits and time constraints on the peg is healthy, whether it's a week or a month or something like that, or a couple of weeks. Okay, so that's my info dump for you about what ludic liberation is and what pegging is. So now I want to see if anyone feels brave enough to get pegged or to play around with kind of jamming on a personal existential game idea. Yeah, we probably won't, I don't know if we will have time to really fully design a personal existential game because it does take, some iteration, but we could definitely like make a playground and play with the space of possibility around what a peg could be. So let me stop. So does anyone feel like they have a game that they are not satisfied with in their life that they want to kind of present to us collectively to jam on? 2 on?
Yeah, I have a kind of like perfectionism game that I play with my music all the time, and it makes me very stuck. Like I'm always kind of reaching for perfection, and I never win the game.
Cool. Yeah, perfectionist game. Tell me. So it sounds like you played with your music practice. So when do you play it?
Like every day for like the last couple of years, and I still haven't released anything.
You haven't released anything, so it's an avoidance of shipping your creativity out there. And how do you so what are the rules of the game? How do you determine?
It's like if I guess the rules are like I need to be like happy enough with the music that I enjoy listening to it. Well, I don't know. I think my rules are stricter than that, to be honest, because sometimes I enjoy my music, but I have some other standard where I just like, it's just not good enough. I might like it, but it's just not good enough. Something like that.
And good enough for what?
Yeah, I guess I want it to be like on the level of the music that I like listening to. I don't know, something like that. Like the bands that I idolize, maybe artists that I idolize.
So I like what I made, but it's not, it doesn't sound like a perfectly produced, you know, commercially released piece of
Yeah.
music that I hear elsewhere.
Mm.
Okay, and then how do you, is there a way to win this game for you?
Cheat. Like I think I realized that I need to cheat a lot more. Like especially with my so like I play all the instruments, and with drums is especially a thing where I have this like rule in my head that I find it hard to get over, that I have to like play the whole drum take, but I can just like cheat and edit it, which is like a thing I've had in my head for ages, but I just never do it. I can just play a bit and just edit it together. But yeah,
Yeah, so
that's
then
like
there's
things like that, just cheating, I suppose.
yeah,
The magic
cheating
of
is great. So you
editing,
could,
you know?
so what would winning be? Would winning be actually releasing your music?
Yeah.
Okay. And what is losing?
Losing is just like staying, just not releasing my music after I've written so much music.
So being invisible and unknown.
Yeah.
Okay. So I like that you brought up cheating, because I feel like cheating is kind of a, yeah, like a classic Peggy way of relating to the games of life, because it's like it's creating an alternate game on top of sort of the social game, the socially approved game. You know, like I guess when I think of cheating, I always imagine like the kid in school who's got like their little cheat sheet. And then so the game becomes, rather than, you know, being smart or knowing the answers, it becomes not getting caught. So it's kind of like a different thrill. So I could imagine, you know, like, because you said cheating as a way of kind of like sounding more professional or more, yeah, like more expert in the music that you put out. Cheating as a technique to kind of fake it. Yeah, so I like that. So I want to invite you to do another thing, which is a kind of a process game that I like to play when helping people, and including myself, to figure out what it is that I like, what form the peg should take, what shape the peg should take, which is the game I call Desire Sorcery. And this game is called Desire Sorcery because it helps you kind of like get to the source of your desire. So you might have this surface desire of, you know, wanting to be, well, whatever, I don't know what it is, wanting to put out your music or really become a super famous musician. I don't know what that is. But the reason that you want to do that might be different, and might be different for you than somebody else. So the way that you play this game, if you're down to play it, Tuan, is first by saying, I want, and you say what it is that you want. And then you follow it up with so that, and you say what that, you know, having that one will allow you to do. And that's sort of one move. And then the next move is you go again, you say, I want, and then you fill in the blank with the so that from the previous sentence. And you kind of keep going down to see, you know, what are the sort of loops and tangles of your desire, because we might realize that, you know, eventually you'll get to a point of where you can't go any further, where you'll be like, okay, I'm just like repeating myself here. So are you down to play this?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so you could speak, you could kind of do the moves, and I'll take notes, and then we'll think about it together. So I want to say, just to prepare you, it's useful to kind of do the whole I want so that, like, I know there's like a desire to sort of speed up. So do each move I want, so that again. And you might be tempted to say because instead of the so that, and you don't want to do that because it's a very different logic. So it'll like loop you back.
All right, so let's see. I want to release and finish the music that I've been writing so that I can play bigger gigs, so that I can share so I can enjoy the participation in a live gig experience, so that I can feel that my gifts are connecting me with more people, so that I can have more meaning in my life, so that
You're doing great. You're doing great. Yeah. And it's often funny. It's often funny because you're like, what is there, you know, you're like 4 moves down.
Yeah.
So this is a good place to keep going. Why do you want to have more meaning in your life?
I don't know. Cause like because of the thought that it makes sense or something like that. Because I've kind of thought about it a lot and it seems to make sense.
So you did the thing where you made it a because it like when we reach a certain point we loop back, we're like, oh.
Well, oh yeah.
You pushed through it by doing so that.
Okay. So that my actions are so that I feel that my actions are moving towards something greater or in a direction. Okay, so how do I put a so that after that?
Why? So I want my actions, I want to feel that my actions are moving in a particular direction so that.
Okay, so that God, this is difficult. I really don't know. It's like I haven't philosophized this far. It seems like something that I somehow. Okay, so that the world keeps turning. I don't know. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, because before your sort of second move was so that it can enjoy participation and life experience. And what you just said kind of has an echo to that. So it's like you could participate in the process of, you know, the world continuing.
Yeah.
Like you want to be, yeah, doing your part in the continuation of the world.
Yeah, I think so.
You do. This is great, and it's great to encounter sort of like the limits of your own, as you said, philosophizing, and also to see some of these patterns, right? Because it's like why, and you could do this with anything, right? You could be like, I want this cookie, so that why, and eventually it leads to like, oh, so that I could have like, you know, energy to enjoy, you know, the being this divine manifestation. Okay, so is there anything that you noticed yourself in doing this process?
I noticed I was like, just before I felt really nervous. I was like, oh shit, I'm like gonna be on YouTube saying this stuff. Like there was just like a feeling of stress like in my legs or something. think it was in my legs, and that's often where I feel it, when I get excited, but also when I feel anxious. But then by the end of it, I just felt I felt really like relieved and like humorous, and like it was just funny. So that was good. Started
Thank
with
you for
stress
sharing that. And
and ended with good vibes.
yeah, thank you for being brave. It is a very vulnerable experience because we don't know what's going to happen, right? You don't know yourself what your desire sorcery is a lot of the time. So I really admire you for being brave and for doing exactly what you actually said in your desire, for participating in the collective life experience. So the sort of the container of the feeling that you had, you know, like having stress in your legs and then feeling like relieved and sort of you know, a little bit of like, yeah, like the energy, the vibes, the ecstasy of that. That could be that itself could be a nice kind of peg in the like, to remember that's like, oh, this is how the process of releasing my music might feel. Like, it's not going to feel good the entire time. It's not going to feel perfect or easy. It might involve these this like roller coaster of stress and release. And that's sort of part of the wave that you want to be riding. Cool, thank you so much. So yeah, I like this. I like doing this desire sorcery process to reveal some of the things that we're trying to get to more deeply. So I think what I'd like to do now is actually invite all of you to try to design a peg for Tuan for releasing more music or cheating. So just as a reminder, what you said, it's a perfectionism game. Where you're trying to sort of sound as good as professional bands that you like. Losing right now is not releasing the music. Winning would be releasing your music and sharing it with the world. And one rule that is limiting is having to play an entire drum set, for example. Does anyone else have any questions for Tuan that might help you figure out an experimental existential game? Yes, Peter.
Is there any sort of like measurable kind of aspects of what good music is? Is like you know, like a chart song, or like this much people know about it, or is it like qualitative?
Not really. I'm kind of like just open. I just have it like a standard in myself, and then once I achieve that, it's kind of like it gets to whatever level afterward. But this sound, like the qualitative sound quality of it, it's yeah, it's all very like subjective, but there's kind of just a level where it's I enjoy it. Ultimately is the ultimate choice there, where I feel like that it's at a level which is hard to quantify.
Ravud.
Hello, everyone, and thanks to Tuan for participating for that revelatory game. What I'm wondering about is, to what degree is this game the first game, meaning it's the game that you start with, as opposed to a game that comes in as an interruption to your original game. So, for example, I might have my first game to be having a conversation with a friend, and that conversation is just a desire to communicate. I'm playing the communication game, but then I find in myself the second game, which interrupts that original game. It could be the game to be smart, the intelligence game, and then that second game captures my efforts. And it's like, okay, now I don't want to play this game anymore because I'm too overwhelmed by that second game. Is your standard or meeting the standards game, is that the first game? And if not, what is that first game? It sounds like it's to some extent external to the creative desire.
Yeah, I think the first game is just to play music, which is just ultimately just play. And it's like it's the producer product game of capitalism or whatever that's put on top of that, which is like, oh, I need to have a product. Or maybe the game of just having to have a product, yeah, beyond anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go ahead, David.
Thank you. And Natalia, my question to you is: do you encourage people to distinguish between those original games and then the external games, the games that interrupt, distract? And what do you think about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. So I do think that, yeah, I like this concept of nested games. We have a lot of games that might be in contradiction with one another. So there's societal games that society wants us to play and the roles that it wants us to take on. And sometimes we voluntarily play them. They seem interesting. Sometimes we feel kind of forced to play them. Then there are kind of like the personal games that we choose that come from us, the sort of the sensing into, what flower we are, how we want to blossom. And it's like, oh, I want to connect with people through music, or I want to sort of be a community holder or whatever. Or I want to share my writing. And so like, those are the games that sort of come from us, and they might already kind of intersect with some of the societal games. Like, well, if you want to, share this, then you have to do it in this way. Like, this is the only kind of fit you could do. And then there's shadow games, which are games that are kind of unconscious to us, but we are playing because we keep finding ourselves in the same situations a lot of the time. And we might, not want to face that there are games. And that's where like sort of the existential kink process comes in, of like helping us realize what our shadow games are. So for Tuan, maybe a shadow game is like wanting to be is actually like wanting to be like the best artist in the world, and it's like it's like there's sort of like this primal game that I heard in your Desire Sorcery. It's like, I just want to play music to connect with people, like it's like there's something cool on the vibe level that I enjoy about that. But then like the shadow is like, but I'm the best artist and I want people to recognize that. And so that game actually like kind of steals away the energy from your personal game, from your from the conscious game that you play, because it comes in and say like, you can't release this yet. So yeah, I think one of the things I like to do is use the concept of double binds, which is like these contradictory rules that we have from different spaces of authority, to actually see the way that we've like trapped ourselves in these kinds of situations that are hard to escape. And by kind of analyzing it, so it's like, oh, I have this one directive to to be a professional musician and put out a product. I have this other directive to just be an artist. And I have this other directive to only be perfect. And they all come from different kind of authority levels. And this is a kind of genius trap that I've created for myself. And, just even realizing that is kind of fun. To me, it's kind of fun. It's like, look at this game that I've made that I'm like, how do I puzzle out of it? And sometimes I can like squirm out of it. And sometimes I feel a lot of feelings about it, and it makes life interesting. And then once you see the trap that you've made, then you could kind of decide, how liberated do you want to be in relation to this trap? Because all of those games play a role in your own experience. So you could start seeing other possibilities for like other doors outside of this trap that you might have ignored before. But yeah, it's a great question. And thank you again, Tuan, for allowing us to analyze your game. Because I know it's both vulnerable, but hopefully also enjoyable, because it's fun to get attention on your gameplay.
That was great.
So I wonder if I can, if I think the best way to practice this is to actually kind of to design some games. So I think I want to send folks into, you said we have 90 minutes, Peter, or an hour?
The default is always an hour, but I can stay till 90, and I'm sure some people can. But if they have to slip out at the top, they can slip out if they like.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure how long we had. So yeah, even for like 7 minutes, if we can go into breakout rooms and try to design a peg for Tuan that might help to liberate or expand or diversify some of the possibilities for winning, and for some of the ways he can use other people or materials in the world to make this game a little bit more open and satisfying. Are people down to do that? All right, cool. So I'm gonna send folks into groups. Well, in the last 3 minutes, did anyone come up with any genius games for Tuan that they want to share with the world? And I'm sure that this game will help all of us because we all play similar games of perfectionism and creativity.
I think it's good to play the opposite game, like playing bad music and recording bad music and just doing the total opposite. Yeah.
That was a theme in our group too. And AJ, who had to leave, he came up with something like a living album. Like you create an album that just gets constantly updated. So it's like it constantly improves. And there's something about that you know, might free someone up who has that perfectionist tendency.
Yeah, Kanye West did that on Life of Pablo. Kept on editing it afterward. Any other ones?
Daryl, do you want to share your game?
Yeah, Natalia and LCC and I thought about all the different ways but what way he could get points for just sharing the song in an elevator or on the subway or to a friend or in a songwriters group or at an open mic night. And the key there was he got 3 times as many points if he actually took in the reaction, the emotion from the listeners, or got feedback from them. You know, it's one thing to just share and get over your social anxiety to share, but if you actually can integrate it and go someplace with it, then you get more points. And then if you do it multiple times a week, you know, the seventh day of the week, you get 3 times as many points, that sort of thing. There's all kinds of ways to gamify it and make it playful and make it rewarding for perseverance.
Yeah, so share even if it's like a lyric or a note with someone every day, kind of like in the rejection therapy style. So you get used to the experience of, you know, the fear, and then they're like, oh, like somebody didn't care at all, or somebody smiled at it, you know, and kind of allowing and tolerating all of those, the whole range of reactions.
That. That's what I want to do actually, is share something with my friends of what I'm working on each day, and especially getting over it when it's not good. Just like sharing the mistakes, getting used to that. That's helpful.
Yeah, I also had a rather, maybe a ridiculous idea, but you can try it on for size, which is decide that you're not going to release any of your music until you're 70.
Yeah, that's a wild one.
The long game.
Yeah, and one of the ideas that came up with that one is like write songs to your, like, let's say if you gain mastery when you're 70 or whenever you gain mastery, write like songs or little musical notes to that person as a gift to them.
Yeah, we talked about something kind of similar. LCC mentioned that giving your gift to the world might be even practicing. So rather than making the win condition, releasing it to an audience of like, you know, infinite listeners all over the world, maybe even just like playing something for a field, an empty field outside, or you know, could be a way of giving it to the world.
I was just thinking, like, from my own experience, that like the stuff that I tried to make so perfect musically was actually what people liked the least. I spent the most time, and it sounded like the most polished, and the stuff that like I was just kicking around in my room and just kind of threw together real quick. Sometimes that stuff was like actually what people like to listen to. So you might try to come up with some game that can show you that actual finished and perfectionness that you're looking for is not so much maybe what's going to connect to people as much. Like you might be able to play people like some of the more finished stuff and some of the more other stuff and try to figure and try to prove to yourself that like maybe it's not that level of perfection that's going to give you that connection with people that you're looking for.
Yeah, I'm it's getting my mind thinking about a lot of different things. I think just even talking about all these different games is quite freeing in itself.
This might be this is a proposal that you can reject without yeah, and I'll use it as my rejection game point. Would you feel maybe open to sharing something with us right now? You know, even if it's like a tiny little 15-second segment, so that you know, you get to experience the whole gamut of feedback.
And if you don't want it on YouTube, I can always edit that out, but that adds a little edge to it as well. And you're mute right now if you're talking.
All right, sorry. Yeah, I was saying I'll just go and do it and play the dangerous game. See what happens. Get some messy. Okay. Okay, let's see what happens. Whoa. Take this down. This is crazy. And just press play. Whoa. I need to stop. This bass is crazy. Okay. So I did it. New game.
You did it. You won the game.
That was more that was like more the opposite way around. Like I feel more nerve-wracked now than when I started. I was at first I was like, oh fuck it, and now I'm like, shit, I did it. Fuck.
Is there anything? So this is okay. I'll give you a little trick that I use, because yeah, when you put out energy out there, it's like this like often ungrounded energy that's like, oh my God, all these people could have had all kinds of reactions to it. And it feels really scary. And I feel like I feel like kind of like electric a lot of the time when I do something like that. So one trick I use, and it's kind of like a tiny micro peg, is I send an email to myself. From it's as if it's written by somebody who was like in the space or in the audience, and it's like all of the reaction that you want to hear. So like, you know, if I was you, I'd be like, hey Tuan, like thanks so much for sharing your tune, you know, like I really loved it, and I'm like would love to hear more, and it was so like, and maybe I'd like to put it in like my in my, I don't know, animated TV show. As have you ever thought about doing something like that? So like whatever it is that you want to hear from other people, or it's like, or like, or maybe you want somebody to invite you to be part of their band or something, or do some music for whatever, for their project, or just be like, hey, I'm interested in hearing more. Is there a way that I can access more of your music? So you can just write that reaction in order to kind of like direct all of that energy into something. And what happens is kind of crazy. Like oftentimes I will actually get that email from somebody, like someone like a day or two will use some of the same exact words that I used in my email to myself. So just a little trick for channeling the reactions that you want to receive from people.
Can I say one of my reactions, which was that I really liked the bass before you turned it down at the beginning there. That was crazy, and it was completely different, and that's the sort of thing I like. So different people like different things, of course.
Nice. Yeah, I actually like that suggestion. Maybe just have the bass totally fuzzed out, overdriven. Because I was, that was the thing I was feeling about it. Like it was getting too clean and getting too like someone messaged like summer vibes, which wasn't. It's not really what I intended when I wrote the song first. So nice suggestion.
The challenge for the listener is that when you hear something unusual and you know it is a work in progress, it's the question is, oh, did he mean that? Did he intend for that to be like that? And then the dialogue begins, because we ask that question, and then you can go back to the work and clarify what you meant. So it's kind of like sharing work in progress gives the artist, might give you the motivation to further clarify. But if it's just on your own, if you're just working on it by yourself for too long, you might not have that motivation to keep revising. But now that discomfort, like, oh, I didn't mean it, then you can now do what you meant. You know what that mean? What I mean?
I actually really enjoyed the process of watching the whole, like the instruments and the instrument tracks, and that was like a really unusual way to experience music. I don't know if it's like a genre or something on YouTube where people, I know there's like for a lot of other mediums, people do like process videos, like, you know, drawing their thing. But yeah, like even you being like, oh, the bass is too loud, or like I'd want to adjust it, like that was actually like educational and revealing, and more like watching a live music rather than some kind of you know, container of like a perfectly already compressed and packaged song. I feel like a lot of people might benefit from that. Actually, I did.
Yeah, that's actually interesting. I was thinking doing things like those. I just felt like I didn't have enough like cameras or like good enough internet, but something like that where you like just make music on the spot and like stream it live, and just start making loops and stuff. That kind of stuff is really popular. So I enjoy watching that kind of stuff. So that's cool. That's nice.
One thing I quite enjoyed is just like sensing into your vulnerability and your sort of like fucking with it, like oh shit, and then before the song even played, and just like that vulnerability made the music like we enjoy the whole process. It's like because you're all in it in that moment. Yeah, so that was something I thought was called to share.
Yeah, I was that was definitely heightened energy, like in the moment, and I like that kind of energy in music, that kind of unexpected energy. So that was cool to hear, Peter. I'd like to hear if anyone has like other like things that they've drawn from this, like how they, if they have like a game that is making, is this drawing on another game that they're playing, or how they can like sidestep their game or play a new game on top of their game. I'd like to hear, kind of bring it back to other people and hear how it's relating to other people.
I'll pop in on that one. So most of this process that I've been listening to, I've been noticing my desire, like when the music was playing, I wanted to see you actually playing an instrument. And I wanted to know what you were feeling as we were listening to it. I wanted a piece of, to see a real person. And so I imagined, I placed that over the top of it. I imagined watching some people riffing, everybody's doing a different thing, and they're still like a group, but they're not overly focused on being real integrated. That was my imagination. Another piece that was really strong for me, the most strong, was I had butterflies and I was nervous. A lot of this, and it just kept flashing back to another moment where I was showing to somebody something I was creating or something I was in the process of building, and the lack of feedback was making me nervous, very much the same way as this. I don't know what games are going on in that, but I just thought I'd share that I was. Yeah, that's kind of, I'll just stop there.
Yeah, I think you've tapped into a game that a lot of people play a version of the avoiding of sharing and the wanting to give something to the world, and the worry about people's reactions and expectations, and sort of, I think in that process, that sort of like indeterminacy of how people are reacting is really, it's confusing, because we don't even know if somebody, like, it's almost would be better to know that like someone truly hates this, and it's like, all right, great, like, thank you, like I should just not do this anymore, because clearly everybody just hates it. But or to know that like, oh, like this is the best thing I've ever seen. And for most people, they're having all kinds of other things going on in their background processing, and they're like, oh, like this reminds me of this thing, or like, yeah, like I'm imagining something else, as it's occurring, or they might be feeling something personal, like, wow, this person is sharing their music, I wish it was me sharing my music, or like, man, I haven't played any music in 2 years. So everyone is having their own kind of like internal anxiety, and we don't even know what to project on other people's anxiety, which is why, like, yeah, I think the rejection therapy game is such a good example, because it's like you can get a straight no, and making that a win is at least like, it's a concrete thing that you could kind of like grab onto. And also, like, people's faces. I did a Ludic Liberation Lab on body language. Somebody else who like does somatic therapy led it, and we played a lot of games of like emotion, like showing emotions and gesture, and then I did some research on that, on like whether people's faces that show emotions accurately, and apparently it's like extremely hard to accurately tell what people are feeling based on their facial expression, and like the only thing that actually kind of tracks pretty consistently is humor, is like if people are like laughing, which is maybe why comedy is so satisfying, but pretty much all the other emotions are incredibly hard to tell what somebody actually is feeling, and it varies by culture. So getting the feedback from people's faces is very, very, very hard. So yeah, I think it would be really fun to imagine to design more like feedback games of getting more straightforward, even if you like have to ask somebody like really explicitly, hey, can you tell me like just a sentence about what you were feeling in that moment? Like, even if that thing is, actually I wasn't even listening at all because I was thinking about my own, like whether I left the stove on, and like just knowing that, I think would help us, place our own response to other people's response. Yeah, but I imagine other people experience this sort of feedback anxiety. Ron, that's a good point. I don't know if you want to voice that.
Yeah, I didn't know if this works as a game, but the whole time I was listening to you two on, I was thinking, like most musicians, you must have something like a muse, and so many. I'm more of a listener than a player, but so many musicians speak about when they focus on pleasing their muse rather than the audience, then the audience ends up being most happy or most fulfilled. Or as Peter often talks about serving the daemon. You work on serving the daemon, and then the rest works out. And that was sort of triggered a little by the Beatles documentary I posted, because you can really just see how the muse and the daemon work with them, and their focus is just not on on pleasing the audience, strangely, but they know it works out and they can look totally goofy in the process, and they're fine because they know they're the real audience, in a sense, if that makes sense. It's harder to make it as a game, because then how do you get the feedback is a little bit of a tricky thing, because we can be hallucinating, but because it's kind of an internal tapping into some other force. So
to jump in on that, and you asked a question too, Tuan, about similar games we play. And yeah, it's like my journaling process. I was so insecure about my writing, and I didn't like submitting stuff publicly, and very rarely I did that beforehand. But then that kind of like that hack, I'm writing to myself, like Marcus Aurelius did, notes to myself. And then so it's like, if you don't like it, okay, fuck off. You don't have to like it. You don't have to read it. I'm just writing to myself. And reading past entries are like cringe, like your narcissism showing, bra, all that type of stuff. But like, I'm so glad I did like almost 400 entries since this process came, because not only I feel my writing has improved, but people actually gain benefit from it. People are following it, et cetera, et cetera. But it was like that hack that I'm just writing to myself. I'm not writing for anyone else. And I believe that actually put me in touch with that creative energy more. And I just became more intimate to it, just with it, like the daemon, as Ron just said. So yeah, it's that move just made all the difference for me to be more public with putting stuff out there.
Yeah, another way of, I mean, it's a little bit more magical of playing with trying to get feedback from the universe is like is getting feedback from like other places that are not necessarily just other people. So like, yeah, like kind of seeing if you could find signs of the universe sort of smiling at you or being pleased by you, you know, blossoming in the way that you are. Like, so maybe it won't be so direct, but like, I like to play this game sometimes where it's like, okay, like, you know, at some point today, or like when I walk around the corner, something like magical will happen. And it might not happen immediately, but like later in the day, I'll see like a, you know, a weird, like a helium balloon, like an out of place. And like that, just like the out of placeness, that absurdity, the out of the ordinaries, it's like, oh, this is a wink from the universe, you know, like getting these like synchronicities and winks as a way of getting feedback from like, okay, like a person might not specifically say, you know, I like this thing, but somebody might even use that phrase in response to something else that, you know, that you did. And, you know, just tracking those kinds of signs and synchronicities, you know, in not direct ways.
Yeah, that's been kind of happening more recently, and I was like, it's like I'm trying to get rid of my old songs, like get those songs released so I can move on to what the daemon wants. Yeah. So, I don't know. Should I sacrifice? It's like, should I sacrifice songs, play the game of like sacrificing, destroying them, or sacrifice my connection with the daemon to get these songs out of the way so I can move on to the next game. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, what if you did like a ritual burial of like, you know, a disc full of songs that were like, all right, these are the songs of like the past self, you know, and then you gave it a little eulogy and just had like a little closing ceremony for them, and maybe like, you know, invited some people to be part of the ceremony, because it's, yeah, we carry a lot of old games with us that kind of get in the way of us inventing new games for ourselves. Yeah, you could have a even stuffed animals as attending your funeral.
Yeah, I put one of my shirts on a pillow to just sort of. I mean, people do weirder stuff. Like in design research, they like they invent these like, you know, they do a bunch of user research, and then they have a persona that like represents their ideal customer. And then like my design professor was telling me how they get a cardboard cutout of like their ideal user, and they're like constantly seeking feedback from it. So like doing some of this like imaginative, like, you know, putting like, you know, imagining the spirit of your muse or your ideal audience and just like an inanimate object and just like performing to it can be a fun thing.
Yeah, I like that one.
The idea of like a pseudonym, and it came up. I'm curious if Natalia wants to talk about that.
Oh,
how that
yeah.
can liberate.
Yeah, coming up with sort of personas for yourself. I don't know if Tuans Luna is your real name, if you have an artist name. I guess it's traditional to take on an artist name as a musician, but I find that very liberating. So Stroika is not my real last name. Stroika means, it's a Russian word for a construction site, or the process of building. And it's also like where, as a kid, I played at construction sites of like abandoned Soviet buildings. So it was a really playful setting for me. But I love the spirit of like being a builder, a playful builder. And the name, like, I felt so burdened by my legal last name, because like that self, you know, got a PhD and became an academic, and like was so like had a particular persona she was trying to perform. So I felt really kind of called internally to create something that didn't have a history, other than sort of a mythic history, but that felt brave enough and sort of like fuck it enough to share her creations with the world. So I find that, yeah, like taking on a persona and putting on a mask can feel liberating. And that's sort of the whole idea of ludic liberation and pegging, is it's like you put on another form of constraint or drag. Like drag is really liberating, right? Drag allows you to take on something that you can't be in the ordinary world. So you agree to new rules and new forms and new identities in order to actually, and those things cancel out or overturn the rules that constrain you, the limits that constrain you in ordinary life.
You can do something like mapping out the various parts of your personality and giving them all their own name, and then performing rituals to summon those parts. So for example, I have one part of my personality where I try to bypass my ego completely, which I call no man. And then I have another part which is trying to lean into the fact of being everything at once simultaneously, which I call nomad. And then there's one for playing with non-duality, which is Leela. And you can map out your personality in all of these different ways. And then when you summon one, and the more you enter into that avatar, you can then practice that particular part of your personality. And then when you return to your general day-to-day life, then you'll find yourself more integrated on all of the different dimensions that you've practiced.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah, I really like that. That last idea.
And hopefully that's marks the return of the glass bead game, Florence Carey Clark here at the Stoa. But we'll close out now. Any parting words you would like to leave us with? Maybe where we can find what you're doing, the Ludic Liberation Lab.
Sure, yeah. So the Ludic Liberation Lab is happens every Thursday, second Thursday of the month. So there's one tomorrow, actually. And sometimes I lead it, sometimes other guest facilitators lead it. This next one tomorrow is actually on creating characters for a kind of a D&D world game called Surreal Punk that some folks have made. And I'm excited to think about this idea of taking on roles and imagining more specific and elaborate characters that exist only in a fantasy world, and what that can help us liberate, kind of a fantasy drag. And I also, if people can't make the lab, I also have a Substack called Lab Report, where I kind of write about what we learned from the experiments, and some other theory sometimes about existential gameplay. So yeah, if anybody is interested to know more, they can join any of those channels. Thank you so much thank you again, Tuan, for your incredible courage and vulnerability today, and for sharing your gift with us. The universe is like totally smiling in all of our avatars as well. I think I might be frozen though, unless other people are. Nope, okay, cool.
I can hear you.
Okay, well, yeah, thank you again, Tuan, for playing, and for everyone else. Thank you for having me, Peter.
Awesome, beautiful. Yeah, thanks so much for coming today, Natalia. When Dawood introduced me to your work, I was just like, yes, there's aliveness there, just the framing. I definitely want to check out the lab, and I signed up for the Substack Lab Report. And I really like how you hold space too. You do it very artfully, and it's evident. So I'd love to have you come back at the STOA for more experiments. And I guess the only event I'll plug, we have two events on metamodernism tomorrow you might like on the thestoa.ca, but Pop Magic, a simple guide to bending your reality, probably has some similar themes here. Alex Gazemi, that's December 14th at 2 p.m. Eastern time. Excited for that one. So that being said, Natalia, everyone, thank you so much for coming to the STOA today.